All self-help books are essentially the same in slightly different packages. From the very first self-help book published in 1859, aptly titled Self-Help by, and this is true, a man named Samuel Smiles, to the more modern, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, all of them are exactly the same. Again, they are the same. So I'm gonna save you from ever having to buy any of these books by breaking down for you the tips from the very first self-help book that still apply today. And if you're saying to yourself, no way they still apply today to our modern world, to my modern sensibilities, I'm telling you, it all applies. And if you find that they don't apply to you, I don't know, comment below and tell me the self-help book that you think is totally different than these. Lesson number 1 is that you do not need to be talented or naturally smart to get ahead. You just need to try really diligently. In fact, many people that are very important in history were not very impressive as youths. And that's actually the structure of this first self-help book, is there's a lot of stories, sometimes dozens, that reinforce the point through these people's lives, mostly men. It's from 1859. Women were not doing a lot of things that were very impressive at the time. Now, this is the first tip that I'm gonna cover, and I'm gonna spend a lot of time here because it's my favorite. If you don't like it, you can just skip forward if you don't want all of the mumbo jumbo and you just wanna move on to tip number 2, and the rest of them are all a lot shorter. The first example of this, you don't have to be naturally smart, is actually Sir Isaac Newton. Yeah, this guy. Now, when you think of this man, I think he's a genius, but it turns out he wasn't even close to top of his class. He just worked really, really hard at his field of study. Sammy Smiles also brought up 2 people from America that I was super inspired by. Ulysses S. Grant, his mother used to call him Useless Grant. Harsh, harsh mom. And then Stonewall Jackson, who was Lee's top lieutenant during the Civil War, was well known as a terrible student, or not a terrible student, but a really slow student. When he was at West Point, he was one of 70 boys, and he graduated 17th. But the thing that he was better at than anyone else was his application of the things that they would learn. So every day they would get a memory verse or something to learn. They call it a recitation.
Recitation.
And he would always be a day or 2 behind because he was so busy trying to perfect the previous day or the previous day's recitation that he couldn't even focus on today's task at hand. So again, he finished 17th. People said that if that school would have gone for 10 years instead of 4, he would have graduated top of his class. So that's just an illustration of his commitment to applying these learnings and the idea that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but you do have to really try and diligently stay on task. And if you think about modern applications, there's so many people who graduate college and they feel really frustrated that graduating with a degree is not getting them the life that they want. But if you think about Stonewall, he probably had the same frustration, right? And he just knew that he had to continue to work really diligently to apply the things that he learned at West Point to the actual battlefield. And that is where all of his value would lie. And he was right. I'm going to quote something directly from the book here. Great results cannot be achieved at once, and we must be satisfied to advance in life as we walk, step by step. One step at a time, people. And just by showing up and just trying, it will build on itself. In the book, Smiles says, the difference between men consists in great measure in the intelligence of their observation. In order to think about the world differently, you have to be in it. You have to be actively solving problems. To illustrate this, he brings up Captain Brown, who is the inventor of the suspension bridge. The reason that he invented that was because, one, he needed to build a bridge and he wanted to do it for cheap, but he didn't really know how to do it. So then he's walking in his garden and he sees a spider web suspended across his path. And he literally uses this tip and this hint from nature to construct the first suspension bridge. So if you think about this, if you just took 15 minutes per day that you're spending right now on something frivolous, Not this YouTube video, of course. Don't stop doing this. But maybe a TikTok binge, a Facebook binge, an Instagram binge, a Netflix binge. If you just took 15 minutes and you dedicated yourself to learning a new skill, playing the piano, learning a new language, learning, I don't know, chemistry. I don't care how intense this is, but just think about at the end of the year how much more rich your life would probably be. Okay, and the last piece here, he does not have a lot of women in this book, as I mentioned, but he does quote one named Mrs. Chisholm? I don't know. The secret to her success, which is, I found, she said, that if we want anything done, we must go to work and do. It is of merely no use to talk. None whatever. So this is our cue. We gotta go do shit. Okay, tip number 2 is that resilience is absolutely critical. People have experienced hardship on their road to success for at least centuries, and way before that, I'm guessing. And Smiles argues that it's actually a requirement for greatness. He says, necessity oftener than facility like being born rich or going to the right school, etc., has been the mother of invention. And the most prolific school of all has been the school of difficulty. In the book, he gives this really long account from Audubon, who's a famous drawer of birds. And I think it's worth just quoting in entirety here in this video because I found it to be a very inspirational story of resilience. And I was like, man, if this guy can do it, I can do stuff. Here's the story of Audubon. An accident, he said, which happened to 200 of my original drawings, nearly put a stop to my researches in ornithology. I shall relate it merely to show how far enthusiasm, for by no other name can I call my perseverance, may enable the preserver, I don't know, of nature to surmount the most disheartening difficulties. I left the village of Henderson in Kentucky, situated on the banks of the Ohio, where I resided for several years, to proceed to Philadelphia on business. I looked to my drawings before my departure, placed them carefully in a wooden box, and gave them in charge of a relative, with injunctions to see that no injury should happen to them. My absence was several months, and when I returned after having enjoyed the pleasures of home for a few days, I inquired after my box and what I was pleased to call my treasure. My treasure. The box was produced and opened, but reader, feel for me, a pair of Norway rats had taken possession of the whole and reared a young family among the gnawed bits of paper, which by a month previous represented nearly 1,000 inhabitants of air. Those are the birds that he had drawn. The burning beat which instantly rushed through my brain was too great to be endured without affecting my whole nervous system. Wah, basically. I slept for several nights, and the days passed like days of oblivion until the animal powers being recalled into action through the strength of my constitution, I took up my gun, my notebook, and my pencils, and went forth to the woods as gaily as if nothing had happened. I felt pleased that I might now make better drawings than before, and ere a period not exceeding 3 years had elapsed, my portfolio was again filled. Scene. Okay, that's just one example, but Sir Isaac Newton had the same thing happen. His little dog, Diamond, what a cute name, am I right? Knocked over a taper and set aflame years worth of his really complicated calculations, and he was sad. Just like Audubon, he had some moments to himself of wah. But he eventually redid the work, and I'm sure it was even better than the first time. Okay, I just have one more past example, which is Dr. Jenner. Dr. Jenner created the smallpox vaccine. Smallpox was a big thing. It would kill people, okay? And people were very scared of his vaccine. The way that he created it was new. I don't know. You don't care. I don't really care. But I care about the story, which is that Tons of people told him to fuck off. And then basically 2 prominent women agreed to let him vaccinate their children. And then all of a sudden everyone was like, you know what, maybe I'll give this a day in court. And he saved a bunch of lives just because he was stubborn and he knew and believed in the science, in his experiments, and he wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. Okay, one last modern example, Will Smith, who calls on his what is today called work ethic to illustrate both of these 2 points on resilience and just getting up and getting it done. Here's the clip.
Only thing that I see that is distinctly different about me is I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill, right? I will run.
You would not be outworked.
I will not be outworked.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
You know, you might have more talent than me. You might be smarter than me. You might be all of those things. You got it on me in 9 categories. But if we get on the treadmill together, right, there's 2 things. You're getting off first, or I'm going to die. It's really that simple.
Now, could you make the argument that perhaps this is why his relationship with Jada is a little bit of a mess? Maybe. Motherfucker just won't give up, you know? Loves that woman. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not a scientist or an actor or an artist, it doesn't matter. These are applicable concepts to you in your daily life. The key thing is that you don't think about the world and occurrences and things that are happening to you, but things that you really do have control over and that you can have resilience against. When bad things happen to you, when you get knocked down, just get the fuck back up. It's okay. It happens to everyone. And in fact, the most successful people in the world get knocked down and they get back up again. Here's another quote from the book. It is the 1 march more that wins the campaign. The 5 minutes more persistent courage that wins the fight. Though your force be less than another's, you equal and outmaster your opponent if you continue it longer and concentrate it more. You gonna run faster, more, longer? Okay, this is it. One last word of wisdom from Marcus Aurelius. Say to yourself in the early morning, I shall meet today ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, uncharitable men. That's the entire quote. And what that means is that those people are not your problem. Too many people get wrapped up because someone was mean to them or someone said something rude to them. Don't let them be your problem. Remain powerful within yourself and your resolve in what you got going on. Resilience is critical. Okay, number 3, self-discipline is the highest virtue. Smiles talks about money in this section in what I found to be like a shockingly relatable way. He's against living at or certainly above your means, and he advocates for saving money for a rainy day and explains it better than I could. Here's the quote. Although money ought by no means to be regarded as a chief end of man's life, so it's not the end goal, neither is it a trifling matter to be held in philosophical contempt. So people who philosophically believe that like money is the root of all evil, like fuck off, basically. Representing as it does to so large an extent the means of physical comfort and social well-being. So money is how you get physical comfort. It's how you're safe. It's how you have a roof over your head. It's how you're clothed. It's how you're fed, right? Though money represents a crowd of objects without any real worth or utility, it also represents many things of great value, not only food, clothes, and household satisfaction, but personal self-respect and independence. He goes on to say, there are large numbers of persons among us who, though enjoying sufficient means of comfort and independence, aka they have enough money, they make enough money, but are often found to be barely a day's march ahead of actual want. Ooh, is that a good way to say living paycheck to paycheck, right? And when a time of pressure occurs, and hence a great cause of social helplessness and suffering, aka they're gonna have to ask people for help because they have not planned appropriately, okay? And in the last that I'm gonna quote here, he says, it is, however, generally felt to be a far easier thing to reform church and the state than to reform the least of our own bad habits. And in such matters, it is usually found more agreeable to our tastes, as it certainly is the common practice, to begin with our neighbors rather than ourselves. So that is what you hear happening all over America, right? Oh, it's the Republicans. Oh, it's the Democrats. Oh, it's this person's fault. Oh, it's that person's fault. It's the woke's fault. It's these people's fault. It ain't nobody's fault but yours. That's what Sammy Smiles is saying 200 almost years ago, is it ain't nobody's fault but yours. You got to get some self-discipline. Now, the real key here is that self-discipline coupled with self-awareness and sometimes, yes, sometimes self-denial, not getting your nails done, not splurging on Starbucks, not getting a pre-dinner cocktail that's too goddamn expensive. And why is it like smoking? Do I really need that? Those things all add up to benefit those willing to do it. Again, when you stack these habits up on top of each other, they result in an end goal that you can be truly proud of. The fourth is to be joyful. Now, if you have a bad attitude, everything is gonna suck. If you believe the world is out to get you, then every interaction you ever have with someone, you're gonna feel like that. Smiles calls this cheerfulness. And he says, cheerfulness gives elasticity to the spirit. I fucking love that, right? You're like a rubber band in the spirit if you're joyful or cheerful. Difficulties cause no despair, for they are encountered with hope. And the mind acquires that happy disposition to improve opportunities which rarely fails of success. So, when you see an obstacle in front of you, you just see it as an opportunity to learn something, for you to grow. You don't see it as failure, and therefore you will succeed. One of the stories that he quotes here is a guy named Carey, who's a missionary in India, and he was the son of a shoemaker. Now, Carey goes over to India, and he's a missionary. So he's doing a bunch of shit that, like, I'm not gonna get into whether it's good or bad and all of the things, but he's very successful regardless, even though he's just a shoemaker. And he goes to this dinner at the table of a governor general, which I think is a very fancy table, and he overhears one officer say to another, loud enough so that he can hear, all bitchy, inquiring whether this Carey guy used to be a shoemaker. And Carey exclaims right away and says, no, sir, only a cobbler, right? So today we call that self-deprecating humor, but it would have been easy for Carey to get all fucking pissed off because that officer was making fun of him and his station in life and where he came from. But Carey didn't let it bother him. He poked fun at it right back, and too often we let people get under our skin on the stupidest shit. Let it go, and be joyful, because that's the best form of revenge. I'll end with another Smith quote: cheerfulness and diligence are 9/10 of practical wisdom. All right, people, we only got 2 more tips to go. The 5th one is that you cannot go alone. Smiles says, our character is molded by 1,000 subtle influences. Which influences you welcome into your realm, especially in today's environment where everyone wants to come in and steal some of your joyfulness, okay? It is so critical to manage what you consume from especially a social media perspective. You gotta surround yourself with great people, both digitally and in your real life. You need people with positive outlooks, can-do attitudes, and that includes your spouse, right? Be really careful about who you latch yourself onto for years and years and years, and have the humility to appreciate those that came before you. Here we have a story about Benjamin Franklin. When he made the connection between lightning and electricity, people actually mocked him. And they were like, what good is that gonna be? And his response was, quote, what is the use of a child? It may become a man. That basically means that this germ of an idea, I trust that somebody else smarter than me is gonna turn it into something fucking amazing. And this is really cute. In the book, Samuel Smiles says, yet therein lay the germ of the electric telegraph, which binds the intelligence of continents together, and probably before many years have elapsed will, quote, put a girdle around the globe. Basically, this is going to connect us all in ways we can't even imagine. And when you look today at the internet, social media, all of these things that we have, all that started from that germ of electricity, it truly is remarkable to think about the fact that we all, as a humanity, are connected by ideas and people that are bold enough to put them out into the world. It's crazy. Last one, you gotta make good choices. Here's what Smiles says. In every moment of our life, conscience is proclaiming that our will is free. It is the only thing that is wholly ours, and it rests solely with ourselves individually, whether we give it the right or wrong direction. Our habits or our temptations are not our masters, but we of them. If you choose to see yourself as a victim you will be. Now, to some extent, everything we've talked about is essentially a choice. You choose to be joyful. You choose the right spouse. But it's worth reiterating in a slightly different way that Smiles says attention, application, accuracy, method, punctuality, and dispatch are the principal qualities required for the efficient conduct of business of any sort. These, at first sight, might appear to be small matters. And yet, they are of essential importance to human happiness, well-being, and usefulness. They are the little things. It is true. But human life is made up of comparative trifles. It is the repetition of little acts that constitute not only the sum of human character, but which determine the character of nations. And that's just it. We're all of humankind, connected to our current, our past, and our future. We all share this planet, and the decisions that we make every day. Do I get up or do I sleep in? Do I drink water or do I get a beer? Do I smile at that person and hold open the door, or do I not? Do I think critically about this task, measure twice, cut once, or do I just fucking do it? These decisions matter, and they add up, not just for all of us individually, but they influence and impact everyone around us. Take life seriously, just a little bit. We can still have fun and laugh and have fun. You need to be joyful. But these decisions are important because, as Smiles says in second to last quote, lost wealth may be replaced by industry, lost knowledge by study, lost health by temperance or medicine, but lost time is gone forever. Make sure you're making smart decisions about how to invest your time. The conclusion, together, these tips are gonna give you 90% of what any self-help book would. Here's the last quote from our main man, Smiles. It is not then how much a man may know that is of importance, but the end and purpose for which he knows it. The object of knowledge should be to mature wisdom and improve character, to render us better, happier, and more useful, more benevolent, more energetic, and more efficient in the pursuit of every high purpose in life. If you're looking for a purposeful life, conquering yourself is one of the greatest accomplishments you can make. Follow me. I'm trying to encourage the people. Subscribe. Give me a self-help book that really changed your life. I'll read it, give you my thoughts. Let's do this, people. Peace.